the kinematics in one dimension, ano? So when we say kinematics, why this branch of physics deals with objects in motion, or sa madaling sabi, so yung mga object na gumagalaw. Okay, so maraming klase ng motion ng object, but for now, let's focus on object that is moving in one dimension only, meaning it is moving along x-axis or y-axis. Okay, so y-axis and x-axis. So when we say x-axis, moving along a straight line, horizontal line, and pag y, vertical ang kanyang movement, ano? So when we say naman 2 dimension, doon napapasok yung vectors natin and yung ating projectile, ano? So now, so since we said already that kinematics is kinematics focuses on objects in motion, ano? So when we say motion, motion is a change in an object's position. So Tagalog, paggalaw. Okay, so relative to a given observer during a certain change in time. Okay, pansinin, no? Relative to a given observer. Without identifying the observer, it is impossible to say whether the object of interest moved. Okay, physicists say motion is relative, meaning that the motion of any object of interest depends on the point of view of the observer. So sabi, every motion daw is relative, ano? So it depends upon the observation of an observer, no? So anong dapat nating gawin? Okay, when describing motion, we need to focus on two important aspects. Okay, so ito yung dapat nating bigyan pansin. Okay, the object whose motion we are describing, or the object of interest, it means the object that is moving, ano? And the person who is doing the describing or the observation. So sabi, relative daw yung motion. So depende yan, ano? Nagbabago kasi yung observation, depende sa nag-o-observe, ano? Kaya dapat, ang mahalaga kapag tayo nagde-describe ng motion, or kapag tayo nagsosolve ng problem regarding kinematics or motion, kailangan maging malinaw sa atin yung tawag din kung sino yung o yung tawag din yung nature ng ating observer, kung anong yung kanyang kalagayan, ano? Now, pansinin, ano? Ba't sinasabing kailangan i-consider natin yung observer, no? Okay. So, pansinin, ano, dito sa picture sa baba. So, meron tayong observer. So, nasa loob tayo ng trend dito, ano? Tapos, merong tao naglalakad. So, to daw tao na to ay naglalakad 5 kilometers per hour. Okay? So, na-observe ngayon nung nasa loob ng trend, ng observer, na 5 kilometers per hour yung kanyang movement, no? Papunta sa harap. Then, nakasakay sila sa trend. Nakita natin yung condition 1, ano, yung situation 1. Ngayon, nasa loob sila ng trend. Diba? Then, yung trend ay nagmo-move ng 80 kilometers per hour. Okay? So, ngayon, ang observer naman tayo na nasa screen, ano, na nakatingin sa screen. Halimbawa, nasa yun nga, trend gumagalaw. Nakita natin 80 kilometers per hour ang movement yan. Then, yung mga nakahintong object dun sa loob, kagaya ng observer na yan, yung nakahinto na yan, that is also moving 80 kilometers per hour. Diba? Then, kung papansin natin, merong naglalakad sa labas. Okay? So, kung yung nasa loob, yung observer sa loob, ang tingin niya dun sa naglakad na tao dun sa gitna, ay 5 kilometers per hour ang kanyang movement na observe niya. Tayo na nasa labas, hindi na 5 kilometers per hour yung movement na na-observe natin dun sa naglalakad sa loob na to. Ayan. Hindi na siya 5 kilometers per hour. Okay, since yung trend ay moving ng 80 kilometers per hour and nalagpasan niya yung stationary object doon, yung mga observer, which is also moving 80 kilometers per hour, by theory, ang kanyang speed ay, or ang kanyang velocity ay 80 kilometers per hour since yung train natin ay moving, plus yung speed ng mismong moving na object, ano, nasa loob. Okay, so which is 80, all in all, we have 85 kilometers per hour. So yun yung ibig sabihin nung dapat i-consider natin yung state ng observer. Depende kasi, ano, kagaya niyan, yung nasa loob, ang pagkaka-observe niya dun sa tao na nasa loob, na dumaan sa kanya is 5 kilometers per hour. Pero tayo, nasa labas tayo ng train, ang ma-observe natin, of course, is 85 kilometers per hour. Okay? So to present a frame of reference, we can always place the origin 0 and the directions of the x and y axis as we like for convenience. The x and y axes are always perpendicular to each other. So pwede natin i-present, ano, yung ating motion or reference natin using a Cartesian plane pa rin, ano, x and y axis. Then the position of an object at any moment is given by its x coordinate. If the motion is vertical, as for a drop object, we usually use the y axis. So kung ang movement natin ay along or horizontal lang, no? So pwede nating ilagay yung position niya along x-axis. For example, at time 1, so ito initial position na, then we have the second position. Ganun, ano? Kung naman sa ang movement naman niya ay vertical, so pwede tayo mag-represent sa y-axis. Next, we need to make distinction between the distance an object has traveled and its displacement. So dapat maintindihan muna natin ano ba yung pagkakaiba ng distance an object traveled versus displacement. Parang kung kasi isipin mo yung distance and displacement, parang parehas lang, ano? So displacement is change in position of the object. Also, it is how far the object is from its starting point, ano? So relative to yung displacement sa starting point. Displacement is a quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Such quantities are called vectors. So yung displacement natin ay vector. Okay, meron siyang direction. Isa yun sa kaibahan sa distance. Distance is a scalar quantity and are represented by arrows in diagrams. Okay, pansinin, ano? For example, meron kang may tao ka dyan, tumakbo ka ng 10 meters east. Tapos, tumakbo ng 20 meters west. Okay? So, diba, ito tayo, no? North, south, east, west. So, una, tumakbo siya ng 10 meters east. Bawa, yan, 10 meters. Yan yung 10 meters niya, no? Tumakbo siya. Then, bumalik siya, no? Kasi west ang direction niya. So, tumakbo siya ng 20 meters west. So, ang tanong, anong kanyang distance traveled? Okay, ang total distance traveled is, so, una, 10. Diba? So, kung kukunin natin yung distance niya, distance traveled is 10 plus 20, yung total na travel niya. Diba? So, we have the distance traveled as 30 meters. Kung kukunin natin yung displacement, lagyan natin ng bar, ano, para, or yan, arrow, para alam na yan ay vector or displacement. Kung kukunin natin yung displacement, this is relative to the starting point, which is 0. Halimbawa, dito siya nag-start, di ba? Sa 0. So, una, pumunta siya ng 10 meters pa kanan. So, positive tayo. 10 meters. Okay? Then, pumunta siya ng 20 meters pa kaliwa. So, we have negative. So, negative 20 meters. So, the displacement now is, so, D is equal to negative 10 meters. So, mayroon ba negative distance? So, yung negative na yan or yung sign, that denotes the direction. Ibig sabihin, pakaliwa. Okay? O kung ang movement naman niya ay vertical, so pababa siya, no? Positive mo, pataas, pababa, negative. Kung horizontal, positive mo ay kanan, negative, kaliwa. Okay? So, let's have now the average velocity. Kasi ito, no? So, an important aspect of the motion of a moving object is how fast it is moving, its speed is how fast it is moving, its speed or velocity. So, ito yung mahalagang aspect ng i-consider natin sa any object na in motion, ano? Yung bilis. Ano ba yung pagkakaiba ng speed at velocity? Okay? The speed refers to how far an object travels in a given time interval, regardless of direction. Pansinin, ha? Regardless of direction. Okay, so wala itong direction. In general, the average speed of an object is defined as the total distance traveled along its path divided by the time it takes to travel the distance. So, from the definition, we have the average speed as the distance traveled all over time elapsed. Okay, yung total na na-travel niya. So, alam na natin kaibahan ng distance sa displacement, ha? So, this is the formula or equation for average speed. So, we have V is equal to X over T. Okay? So, now, speed is simply a positive number. Okay? With units, ano? Velocity, on the other hand, is used to signify both the magnitude or the numerical value of how fast an object is moving and also the direction in which it is moving, ano? So, ang difference ng speed at velocity, so yung speed natin ay scalar kasi wala, regardless of direction, ano? Or no direction. Then, velocity, okay, has a direction. Yun ang kaibahan ng dalawa. May direction yung velocity, yung speed ay wala. So, velocity is therefore a vector. There is a second difference between the speed and velocity. Namely, the average velocity is defined in terms of displacement. So, kung gamit natin sa speed, distance. So, dito displacement. Naintindihan na natin yung difference between distance traveled and displacement. Rather than total distance traveled. Ano? So, yun ang gamit dito, displacement. So, average velocity by definition is displacement over time elapsed. So, that is equal to the final position minus yung initial position natin. Ano? So, ito yung starting point na alam natin, no? Initial position all over time elapsed. Yung total time, syempre, na na-cover to move from one position to another. So, we have, okay, meron na tayong bar. So, V is equal to delta X all over T. Or simply delta, this should have delta. So, X sub 2 minus X sub 1 all over T sub 2 minus T sub 1. Okay? So, try natin, ano? Solve tayo ng problem. Naka-open by calculator. Hindi yata naka-open. Yun. Okay. So, the position of a runner as a function of time is plotted as moving along the x-axis of a coordinate system. During a 3 seconds time interval, the runner's position changes from 50 meters to 30.5 meters as shown in the figure. What is the runner's average velocity? So, ang tinatanong sa atin ay average velocity. So, dito magagamit natin yung formula or equation, ha? So, V bar is equal to delta X over delta T. So, initial time mo, syempre, 0, di ba? So, papansinin natin, dito siya nanggaling, ano, yung position kasi dito naka-flat, ano? Dito siya nagsimula sa 50. Then, nag-move siya, after 3 seconds, nakarating siya sa 30. Okay, 30.5 to be precise, yun yung given. So, ang hinahanap, what is the average velocity? So, we have now, so dahil pakaliwa yung movement natin, so we have X sub 2 minus X sub 1 all over T sub 2 minus T sub 1. So, we have X sub 2 as 30.5 So, doon siya pumunta. Remember that is the position, ano? Kaya pwede. Then, yung x sub 1 niya, initial position is 50. All over, t sub 2 is 3. So, tandaan natin, syempre, saan magsisimula sa time? Sa 0. Tandaan natin walang negative na time. Okay, so we have 30.5 minus 50. Oh, sorry. Simplify na nga natin. So, we have 30.5 minus 50, that is negative 19.5, ano? 19.5 all over 3. So, solving, we have V bar is equal to negative 19.5 all over 3. So, we have negative 6.5. Tama ba ako? 50 minus 30.5, that is 19.5. Okay, so we have negative 6.5 meters per second. Okay, so yun yung sagot. Kung papansinin, nag-negative tayo. Remember that this is velocity. So, yung ating sign, ang dinedenote niya, yung direction ng movement. Since yung ating movement ay along x-axis, di ba? At nakita natin sa figure, pakapunta sa kaliwa yung runner, di ba? So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng ating velocity na nag-negative. Ibig sabihin, ang direction ng kanyang velocity ay papunta sa kaliwa. Okay? Yun ay dinedenote nun. Now, another example. How far can a cyclist travel in 2.5 hours along a straight road if her average velocity is 18 kilometers per hour? So, gaano daw kahaba yung pwedeng matravel na isang siklista kung ang kanyang velocity ay 18 kilometers per hour? Okay? So, direct substitution, napakadali. So, we have V is equal to x over t, di ba? Yan ang kanyang velocity. So, we are solving for the distance or the displacement, ano? So, in this problem, displacement tayo. So, to solve for x, cross-multiply lang, ano? Pwede ka rin mag-manipulate dito. So, we have x is equal to v bar or times t or the velocity. Halos parehas lang naman yung equation ng speed at velocity. Nagkakaiba lang dun sa ginagamit na distance tsaka sa displacement. Okay, so x natin will be equal to, or the distance traveled is, so 18 kilometers per hour times 2.5. Okay, so this is equal to 18 times 36 plus 9, 45 kilometers. Okay, so makakancel yung R. Then we have 45 kilometers. Okay, so another problem, a car travels at a constant for 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers. It then speeds up to n is driven another 100 kilometers. What is the car's average speed for 200 kilometer trip? So, merong kotse, nagta-travel for 100 kilometer. If it then speeds up to and is driven another, teka lang, may kulang tong problem na to. But, constant, meron tong meron sigurong dyan, speed. Average speed. Yung time, wala yung time, kulang tong problem na to. Lagpasan muna natin. Kasi puro distance yung given. Okay. Let's have muna acceleration, okay? An object whose velocity is changing is said to be accelerating. For instance, a car whose velocity increases in magnitude from 0 to kulang na naman. 2 is accelerating, okay? Acceleration specifies how rapidly the velocity of an object is changing. When we say acceleration, ito yung rate ng pag-increase ng velocity. Kung halimbawa nagta-travel ka dito sa point na to ng 2 meters per second, pagdating mo sa point na to, ang velocity mo na ay 5 meters per second, so that means you accelerated, ano? Nadagdagan yung speed mo. Okay, yun lang ibig sabihin nun, yung bilis ng pagbilis. Parang ganun, ano? Or rate of change of velocity. Okay, so now, average acceleration is defined as the change in velocity divided by the time taken to make this change. For example, from this distance to this distance, from this point to this point, okay? So, dito sa initial, 2 ka, di ba? Then, dito naging 5. So, na-cover mo, ang acceleration daw is the change in in velocity for a given period of time, ano? Yung time na na-take mo mula dito hanggang dito. Okay? So yung acceleration, okay? So average acceleration is equal to change of velocity all over time elapsed. In symbols, the average acceleration, may kulang na naman, over a time interval during which the velocity changes by is defined as, kulang-kulang yung lecture. So, meron dito capital letter A. Bad trip. Okay, so ito yung ating equation. So, A is equal now to V sub 2 minus V sub 1 all over T sub 2 minus T sub 1. Ito, don't be confused. This is elapsed time, no? So, the time needed for V1 to change to V2. Okay, so this is the final velocity, initial velocity. We have delta V all over delta T. Let's try, ano? A car accelerates on a straight road from rest to 75 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds. What is the magnitude of its average acceleration? So from rest, ano? So therefore, yung V sub 1 ay 0. So V sub 2 mo is equal to 75 kilometers per hour. Kaya lang, yung time natin ay naka-seconds. So, we need to convert this one, ano? Gawin natin meters per second, gawin natin standard. So, 75 kilometers per hour times, okay, so kilometers, gawin natin meter. So, this is 1,000 meter over 1 kilometer. Tapos yung R, so pansinin, ano? convert lang natin. So, ito, naka-hour. So, nasa denominator. So, 1 hour all over 3,600 seconds. So, we have, calculator. So, we have 75 times 1,000 all over 3,600. So, we have 20.83. Okay, so this is 20.83. 20.83 meters per second. Okay, so to solve for the acceleration, okay, apply lang natin. A is equal now to V2 minus V1 over T2 minus T1, di ba? So V2 natin is 75, or kinonvert natin naging 20.83 na meters per second, minus initial velocity, since siya from rest, so 0. Okay, hindi siya gumagalaw. Then, T2 minus T1, so 5 seconds, ano? 5 minus 0, di ba? So, we have, so 20.83 all over 5. So, we have 4.17. 4.17 meters per second squared. Bakit naging ano? Pansinin to, meron ka meter per second all over second. Okay, parang ano lang yan, ano? Oh, meters times 1, s times s squared. So you have m all over s squared. So yun lang ibig sabihin nun, ano? So the average acceleration is 4.17 meter per second squared. Okay. So an automobile is moving to the right along a straight highway. Then the driver steps on the brake. If the initial velocity when the driver hits the brake is 15 meters per second, and it takes 5 seconds to slow down to 5 meters per second, what was the car's average acceleration? Okay? Ang sabi, meron daw automobile, di ba? Ngayon, nagta-travel siya. Then, biglang, okay, the driver steps on the brake. Namalayan yung driver. The initial velocity, okay, when the driver hits the brake, okay, halimbawa, nagta-travel yung sasakyan. Okay? Bawa, namreno siya sa point na yan. Dito siya sa point na to namreno. At yung kanyang velocity dyan ay 15, di ba? 15 meters per second. Okay, and it takes 5 seconds to slow down. Then mag-move yan, di ba? Hanggang, diba, sa point na to, so time is 5 seconds. Okay, sa point na to, ang kanyang velocity na ay 5 meters per second. So, kung iisipin natin, galing siya ng 15, bumaba siya ng 5. Ibig sabihin, pabagal yung sasakyan. Okay? So, ang tanong sa atin, what was the car's average acceleration? Solve natin, ano? So, A now is equal to, so, V2, A bar tayo, V2 minus V1 all over T sub 2 minus T sub 1. So, we have V sub 2 is equal to 5 meters per second minus 15 meters per second all over T sub 2 minus T sub 1 is 5 seconds then. So, we have negative 2 meters per second squared. So, ito yung ating average acceleration. Pero ano dapat ang mapansin? So, nag-negative. So, ano ibig sabihin? So, pakaliwa yung movement? Mali. Okay? So, kapag ganito ang iyong nakuhang sagot sa acceleration, this means na yung acceleration mo ay deceleration. No? Hindi siya acceleration, deceleration siya. Meaning, pabagal yung object. Okay? It's either accelerate or decelerate. Yeah? Pag negative, this means 2 meters per second squared. Pero hindi laging ganon. Okay? So, diba, bago ka kasi mag-move ng opposite direction, mag-i-stop ka muna. So, ito, nag-a-apply to sa uniform yung iyong motion. Ano? Kung puro pa kanan ka lang. Diba? Kasi, kapag ikaw, nag-move ka ng vectory, kapag nag-move ka along a straight line, kapag ka nag-change ka ng direction, naging opposite. So, at this point, magsisiro ang iyong velocity. Okay? Magsisiro ang iyong acceleration dyan. Okay? Yun yung ibig sabihin nun. Pero dito, kapag nag-negative, hindi ibig sabihin kakaliwa ka. Okay? Ang ibig sabihin, pabagal. Okay? Deceleration. So, we have now deceleration. So, when an object is slowing down, we can say it is decelerating. But be careful, ano? Deceleration does not mean that the acceleration is necessarily negative. The velocity of an object moving to the right along the positive axis is positive. If the object is slowing down, the acceleration is negative. But the same car moving to the left and is slowing down has positive acceleration that points to the right. We have a deceleration whenever the magnitude of the velocity is decreasing. Thus, the velocity and acceleration point in opposite directions when there is deceleration. Okay, so ito yung dapat nating makita, no? Screen. Ayun. Halimbawa, ang movement mo, pakaliwa ka. Diba? Ito yung Cartesian plane mo. Tapos, kaliwa ang movement mo. So, yung velocity, diba, ay negative. So, you have a negative velocity. Diba? So, apply natin ngayon dito. So, average acceleration, V2 minus V1. So, kung puro no? Halimbawa, from, baliktarin natin, diba? Yung movement mo pa kanan is 15 to 5, diba kanina? Ngayon, gagawin natin dito, 15 to 5 din, pero pakaliwa. So, negative 15 to negative 5. So, T2 minus T1 pa rin tayo. So, we have A bar is equal to, yung ating V2 is negative 5 naman, nangyari, negative 5 minus negative 15. Tingnan natin mangyayari. So, supposedly, deceleration ang lumabas. Tingnan natin kung magne-negative yung acceleration. So, we have 5, ano? So, we have A bar is equal to negative 5 plus 15 all over 5. So, that will be equal to 10 over 5. That is positive 2 meters per second squared. Okay? So, pansinin, ano? Deceleration siya pero positive. So, ito yung magiging cautious tayo dito sa part na to. Palaging kung ang object mo is moving to the left or to the negative x-axis, kung deceleration ka, magne-negative yung deceleration. Positive ang yung deceleration. Opposite, ano? Siyempre, acceleration mo, negative din kasi papuntang kaliwa. Diba? Kung kaliwa ang movement. So, dapat magiging cautious tayo sa part na yan, ano? Susundin lang natin. Madali lang naman yan eh. Susundin mo lang yung kung distance mo, di ba? X sub 2 minus X sub 1. Sundin mo lang yung sign convention. Kung negative siya, lagay mo negative. Para hindi ka mamali. Okay? Pero sana naintindihan yung part na yun na kapag ang movement mo sa pakaliwa, so ang deceleration mo dyan ay positive. Pero kung pakanan ka, diba? Kung kanan ang iyong motion, positive velocity, negative deceleration. Pero yung acceleration mo, positive. Okay, kung nag-accelerate yung object, positive. Kung nagde-decelerate, negative. Okay, sana malinaw tayo sa part na yan. So now, let's have the motion at constant acceleration. So dito, okay. So mula dun sa ating mga na-take na equation for speed, velocity, acceleration. Now we have motion at constant acceleration. Meaning throughout the motion or the movement of an object, you have a constant acceleration or the acceleration is not changing. Okay? So let's derive some equations. So here we're going to derive or relate V or equations relating V, distance, time, and acceleration, ano? Okay, let's try it. Mag-derive tayo ng equation na pwede nating magamit. So we have speed is equal to delta x all over delta t. Diba? Okay, so dito, since constant acceleration tayo, okay. So, mangyayari dito, we are going to rename t is equal to t sub 2. Okay, then t sub 1 is equal to 0. Okay, also, yung ating x sub 2, papangalanan natin ng x yan, ano? And yung ating x sub 1, that will be equal to x sub 0. Okay, yung t sub 1, that will be also named as t sub 0, di ba? Okay, so dito ngayon, meron kang x minus x sub 0 all over t. So, nawala na yung t sub 0 because that is equal to 0. So, yung movement mo ay from 0 or from rest. Okay? So, meron tayo ngayong v is equal to delta x minus x minus x sub 0 all over t. Okay. So, meron naman tayong equation para sa acceleration. Our average acceleration, we have delta v all over delta t. So, simply, this is equal to v minus v sub o. Okay, so yung ating v dito, yung v sub 2 natin, that will be named as v. And yung ating v sub 1 will be named as v sub 0, or initial velocity. Then we have t. Okay, so we can simplify this equation, so we can cross multiply. Okay, we have a sub t, at is equal to v minus v sub o. Then, transposing v sub o, we have v is equal, or final velocity is equal to v sub o plus at. So, we have first equation. Okay, so itong equation na to, pansinin ano, yung final velocity natin. This is final, this is not an average velocity. So from your initial velocity, upon motion with a constant acceleration, so madadagdagan yung iyong velocity, yung initial mo madadagdagan, and depende sa time na mako-cover, yun yung magiging additional velocity. So ito siya, so V is equal to V sub O plus A times T. Okay, so now, so we have, since yung ating movement or yung ating motion, okay, halimbawa x and y axis, so halimbawa ito yung graph ng iyong velocity, at yung iyong velocity or acceleration is constant, therefore the ratio or the rate of change of the velocity is constant. Therefore, kung kukunin natin yung average nitong tatlong velocity or nitong dalawang velocity, considering V1 and V2, kung kukunin natin yung average yan, we just simply, okay, to get the average velocity, V bar is equal to V1 plus V2 all over 2. Okay, para ka lang nag-average sa ating stat, parang ganun lang ang dating. You add the two velocity and then, or sorry, this should be V sub 2, V and V sub 0. So for final and initial, so this is final and this is initial. V plus V sub O all over 2. Okay, and now, kung meron tayo nito, okay, so we can now substitute that, okay, so from this equation, so we can derive, okay, we can derive x from this equation, so by cross multiplication we have, we have V bar is equal to x minus x sub O all over T. So we can solve for x, so cross multiply, you have now V bar T is equal to x minus x sub O. So you can transpose or solve for x, you can have x sub O plus V bar times T. So now, so from this equation, we can substitute this equation. Okay, pasok natin to dito. Palitan natin yung V bar. So we have x is equal now to x sub 0 or x sub O plus, okay, so V plus V sub O all over 2 times T. Okay, so we can also replace this V by this equation, yung value nito. So substituting the value of V here, so we have x is equal to x sub O plus, okay, yung value ng V, so we have V sub O plus A sub T plus V sub O all over 2 times T. So simplifying, so meron tayong dalawang V sub O, so we have x is equal to x sub O plus 2VO plus A sub T, di ba? Times T all over 2. Okay, so simplifying, now we have x is equal to x sub 0 plus 2 divided by 2V sub O divided by 2 times T is equal to V sub O T, diba? Plus, so this one we have 80 squared all over 2. So we have 80 squared, 80 times T is 80 squared all over 2. So this is an equation, So we have x is equal to x sub O plus V sub O times T plus A sub 80 squared all over 2. So another equation. So from here, so we have x is equal to x sub O plus yung ating V sub O V plus V sub O times T all over 2, di ba? So kung wala tayong time, so pwede nating isolve yan, So we have A is equal to V minus V sub O all over T, Di ba? Meron tayong equation na yan. So, solving for time, we have T is equal to V minus V sub O all over A. Okay, solving for T, cross multiply lang. So, palit natin dito. So, we have na X equals X sub 0 or X sub O plus V sub O all over 2 times V minus V sub O all over A. So, simplifying, we have X is equal to X sub O. So, plus, okay, plus, lipat na natin yung X sub O para mas madali. Transpose na natin dito. So, we have X minus X sub O is equal to, so, ang matitira na lang ito, di ba? Itong part na to. So, you have binomial, binomial sa binomial. So, we have same values, kaso different sign sa gitna. So, we have V squared minus VO squared, V sub O squared all over 2A. So, this is another equation. So, we can relate distance, velocity, and acceleration, kahit walang time. Ito relation niya. Or, when you simplify, this is delta x is equal to V sub 2, V squared minus V sub O squared all over 2A. Nantok na ako. Okay? Yun yung sa equation natin. So, to summarize, so we have equation for final velocity, V sub O plus A sub T, AT. Then we have equation for relating distance. Ito kompleto ka dapat, di ba? Merong acceleration, time. Dito sa equation na to, ito yung kompletong equation. And dito, so ito yung walang time, Pwede ka makapag-solve ng walang time. Then dito naman, this is the equation of average velocity. Average velocity for constant acceleration. Okay? So let's try to solve a problem. A car accelerates from 4 meters per second to 21 meters per second in 6 seconds. What was its acceleration? Okay? So acceleration natin daw is equal to V minus V sub O all over T. So initial velocity mo is 14, final velocity is 21, and yung initial mo is 14. Okay, all over time is 6. So we have acceleration is equal to 7 over 6, or simply this is equal to, so 7 over 6, this is equal to 1.17. So 1.17 meters per second squared. Ang tanong, pangalawang tanong, how far did it travel in this time? So, kung isipin natin, so dito 14 ka, di ba? Tapos dito naging 21. Gaano kahaba yung na-travel mo bago ka mag-gain ng 21 meters per second na velocity? So, what is this distance? So, meron tayong equation. So, we have yung ating delta x is equal to V squared minus V sub O squared all over 2A. Okay, so to solve, we have now x is equal to V squared natin is equal to yung final velocity, we have 21 squared minus 14 squared all over 2 times 1.17. Diba? So, solve natin. X now is equal to, okay. Solve, okay. We have 21 squared minus 14 squared all over. So, yun yung sagot kanina. So, we have 1.17. Okay, 2 times 1.17. Okay, so we have 104.7 meters. So we have 104.7 meters. So ganun kahaba yung iyong tatravel. Okay, for 6 seconds kasi yan, So pwede kaya natin gamitin itong equation na to. X is equal to VOT plus 1/2 AT squared. So try natin, So VOT natin, initial velocity is 14. times t natin is 6. Di ba? Mahirap magsulat. 6 ang ating initial velocity ay ang ating time plus 1/2. Acceleration is 1.17 times 6 squared. Tignan natin yung pares yung makukuha natin, okay? So we have 14 times 6 plus 1/2 times 1.17 yung acceleration natin times yung ating squared ng time. Naloko na. 6 squared. So we have 105.06. Ba't nagkaroon ng discrepancy? So 14 times 6. Nagkaroon ng konting difference. Yung 36 to. Teka lang, ba't nagkaroon ng ano? So 105.06 minus 104.7. So meron tayong 0.36 na difference. So dapat, kung gagamitin natin to, 14 times 6 plus 0.5 times acceleration natin times yung ating time, 105 na sakto. So dito meron tayong konting ano, no? Sa part na to. So ulitin natin, no? Ulitin natin yung calculation, baka namali lang ng pindot. So 14 squared all over 2 times 1 point, okay, alpha. Ayun, meron lang, ano, nagkamali lang siguro ng pindot kanina. So 1.17. Ayun, no? 1.17, nagkakaroon siya ng difference. Okay, so kung so parehas na yung nakukuha natin, okay? So this should be 105. Okay? So itong part na to. So equal siya, parehas tayo ng sagot. Okay? Palitan ko lang, gawin kong 105. 105 meters. Also this is 105 meters. Okay. So another example, a baseball pitcher throws a baseball with a speed of 43 meters per second. So estimate the average acceleration of the ball during the throwing motion. In throwing the baseball, the pitcher accelerates it through a displacement of about 3.5 meters from behind the body to the point where it is released. So ito yung point behind the body and ito yung point where it is released. So pag bitaw sa kanya, ang speed na ng baseball ay 43 meters per second. So mula doon, sa likod hanggang sa harap ay 3.5 meters. So ang tanong sa atin, estimate the average acceleration of the ball during throwing motion. So mula dito hanggang sa point na to, ano yung kanya acceleration? So we have the initial velocity. So mula dito, di pa siya nagmo-move, 0 ka, di ba? So 0. Then yung final velocity mo sa point na to, so v is equal to 43 meters per second ka na dyan. Okay, then yung distance na travel mula sa point ng initial to final is 3.5 meters. So we can solve the acceleration using this equation. So we have delta x is equal to v squared minus v sub o squared all over 2a. Solving for a, you can solve for a, so cross multiply lang. So we have a is equal to v squared minus po squared all over 2 delta x. So since yung ating x sub 0 is 0 naman yan, ano? So we can now use a is equal to v squared. So v squared natin is 43 squared minus yung ating initial is 0 squared all over 2 times 3.5. So a will be equal now to 43 squared all over 2 times 3.5. So that is equal to 264. 264.14. So this is 264.14 meters per second. So yun yung acceleration natin. Check nga natin. Okay, so yun yung acceleration niya. So kumbaga sa distance na yun, para maging yung na-cover na distance sa 3.5, ma-accelerate mo yung ball ma-accelerate mo yung ball from 0 velocity to 43 meters per second. Yung i-clean ng distance na yan. So you need a 264.14 meter per second na acceleration. Okay, a light plane must reach a speed of 35 meter per second for takeoff. So how long a runway is needed if the constant acceleration is 3 meters per second? So halimbawa, meron kang light plane dito. Ganyan kaya, pwede kang ganyan plane. Halimbawa, ganyan. Ito, ito yung runway mo. Diba? So, may gulong yan. So, ngayon, bago mag-take off, kailangan maka-build up ng velocity or speed yung ating plane ng 35 meters per second bago siya mag-take off. Ngayon, gaano kahabang runway ang kailangan para makuha niya yung 35 meters per second, knowing na yung ating acceleration is 3 meters per second squared. Okay? So, solving for x again. So, we have x is equal to v squared minus vo squared all over 2ax. 2a, sorry. So, we have 2a. Okay? So, x now will be equal to, so v squared natin, final velocity niya kailangan, 35 meter per second squared. Minus, syempre, galing siya sa rest, so 0. 0 squared, okay? All over 2 times 3, no? Yung acceleration natin. So, we have, solving, we have 35 squared all over 2 times 3. So, that is equal to 204.17 meters. Okay? So, yun, ganun kahaba yung runway na kailangan in order for the plane to reach a speed of 35 meters per second given an acceleration of 3 meter per second squared. Okay? So, determine the stopping distances for an automobile going constant initial speed of 95 kilometers per hour and human reaction time of 0.4 second. For an acceleration of a is equal to negative 3 meters per second squared and for negative 6 meter per second squared na acceleration. Okay, meaning, so numreno, no? Diba? Determine the stopping distances. Okay? So, kapag kasi nag-numreno ka, hindi naman agad na full stop, di ba? So, nagmo-move pa rin. Kapan dun sa pag-apply mo ng brake, so magde-decelerate, babagal yung sasakyan. So, ang hinatanong, gaano kahaba yung distance pang na-travel? Okay? Determine the stopping distance for an automobile going constant initial speed of and a human reaction time of 0.4 seconds for an acceleration a is equal to 3 meter per second squared and a is equal to negative 6. Okay, ba meron kang sasakyan, di ba? Dito natin drawing. So meron kang automobile, di ba? Ayan. So ayan. Bago sa, dito yung point na namreno ka. At ito yung, sabihin natin t is equal to 0.4. So, bago ka mamreno. Bawa, yung reaction time na sinasabi, yung human reaction time yan. Ano? Bawa dito, naisipan mo mamreno, pero hindi nakasunod agad yung paa mo. Parang ganun yung coordination. Ano? Dito, naisip mo na mamreno, pero dito ka lang, after 0.4 seconds, siya ka lang nakapamreno. So, consider natin tong part na to, di ba? Yung distance na yan. x. So, ang tanong, gaano kahaba bago mag-zero yung or huminto yung ating automobile? Okay? So, ito yung final mo, no? V mo is equal to 0, final velocity. So, ang initial velocity mo is 95 kilometers per hour. So, solving now, V sub O, convert lang natin ng meters per second. So, 95 kilometers, so we can write 95,000 meters, okay, per hour, times, okay, so 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. Diba? So, we have 95,000 all over 3,600 seconds. So that is 26.39. So we have V sub O as 26.39 meters per second. Ngayon, pwede natin kunin, biyakin muna natin, yung part na to ay naisipan mo na Ma'am Reno kaso hindi mo pa naitapak agad yung paa mo. Gano'n yung distance na na-travel mo? Parang ito yung human error na tinatawag kasi na-Reno ka na pero yung paa mo, kumbaga naisip mo na Ma'am Reno pero hindi nakasunod yung paa. So, consider natin itong point na to, no? Okay, so 0.4. Gano'n yung na-travel niyan, yung x na yan? Sabihin natin this is x sub 1. Tapos itong part na to is x sub 2. Total distance traveled is x sub 1 plus x sub 2. Okay, so x sub 1, so we have v is equal to x over t. Solving for x, we have x is equal to v times t. Okay, so multiply lang natin yung initial speed natin. Hindi ka pa nag-apply ng brake, so hindi ka pa nagde-decelerate. Constant pa ang iyong speed. So we have 26.39 meters per second times yung ating time 0.4 seconds. So we have 26.39 times 0.4. So we have 10.56. So we have 10.56 meters. So sa mga katwid, mula dito sa point na to, naisipan mo hanggang doon sa nakatapak ka na. So that covers the 10.56 meters, ano? So ganun agad kalayo yung na-cover. So next, so we have to solve for this length, ano, or distance. So let's say x sub 2 now is equal to, okay, so initial and final ang meron lang tayo. Okay, initial speed, meron tayong acceleration, unang gamitin natin -3. So we can use VOT plus 1/2 AT squared. So pwede ba ito? So hindi. Bakit? Wala tayo nung time kung gaano katagal bago siya mag-stop. Okay? So ang gagamitin natin yung speed, acceleration, tsaka distance lang. So we can use x sub 2 is equal to v squared minus v sub o squared all over 2a. Okay, so x sub 2 is equal now to v squared minus v sub o. So yung final mo 0. So vo minus vo squared. So we have 26.39 meter per second squared all over 2 times -3. -3 meters per second squared. So solving now. So we have negative 26.39 squared all over 2 times -3. So we have 116.07. Siyempre, ang hinahanap natin the stopping distance for an automobile going constant initial speed. So yung distance na yon, total distance na to, mula dito sa una hanggang dito sa final. So i-add natin ngayon yung 10.56 plus 10.56. You have 100 x sub 2 is equal to 126.63 meters. So, yun, ano? Yun yung distance para sa -3. So, pansinin, positive pa rin yung nakuha kong x. So, tama yung pagsasolve kong ginawa. Okay? So, wag mali dito sa sign, ano? So, try natin yung isa. So, this is for letter A. So, yung for letter B, same lang ito, no? Ito pa rin yung x sub 1 mo. Okay? So, ito ngayon, x sub 2 at negative 6, ano? So, x sub 2 mo, negative 6 yung gamit natin. So, palitan lang natin yung negative 3 ng negative 6. So, we have 26.39 pa rin squared all over 2 times negative 6. Okay? So, papalitan lang natin ngayon. So, we have negative 26.39 squared all over 2 times negative 6. So, we have 58.04. Okay. So, plus 10.56. So, we have 68.59. So, x sub 2 is equal to 68 or sorry. So, this is 116 point. So, this now is total distance na tong part na to, no? Kasi in-add na natin tong x sub 1. So, this is the total distance. Tatama ko lang tong part na to, huwag mali dito, 63 meters. So, total distance na yan, no? And dito, sa x sub 2 mo, ulitin ko lang tong part na to. Okay, so we have 26.39 squared all over 6. So, this is 116.07. Yung x sub 2. Para malinaw lang. So, this is 116.07 meters. And this one, yung x sub 2 nating nakuha dito, so we have negative 26.39 squared all over 2 times negative 6. So that is equal to 58.04. So this is 58.04. 0.04 meters. So idadagdag natin x sub 1. So we have x is equal now to 58.04 plus 10.56. That is equal to 68.59 or 68.6. Okay. So sana malinaw tayo dyan. Part na yan. Hanggang dyan na lang muna siguro. And ito, bibigyan ko pala kayo ng assignment para sa section BSE 1D, Ireg G and Ireg H. So ito ang assignment natin. Solve natin to. Pakisolve. Okay. So sana 19 nuggets natin, ano? Then itong assignment na to ay gawin natin recitation, ano? Tatawag ako ng kung sino magsasolve live. Okay.